So, if you've been in any sphere of Christianity for any length of time, doesn't matter what it is, whether that's 1 year and you're brand new, or if that's 30 years and you're a vet, uh, chances are you have or are going to experience the maybe confusion, the kind of grief, pain of having your leader depart, leave, change positions, transition out, um, whatever you like the different kind of terminologies that we use now. It's going to happen to you. Whether that's you're a little kid and your Sunday school teacher is just an older lady and so she passes away, or if that's your senior pastor has to move because their mom has been suffering from dementia and it's beyond her ability to care for herself, or if that's that your youth pastor has accepted a senior pastorship somewhere else, or I mean, there's infinite circumstances in which this can manifest itself. But either way, if you're a constituent, a congregant, a student, it often leaves confusion of like, but why did they leave us? Why did they leave me? Personalize it, right? Why didn't they? Why are they leaving me? And it's like starting it off first. It is okay to feel. It's okay to just feel that kind of that woundedness. That's acceptable. You don't have to shy away from it or fear it. It is okay to just feel a little bit of grief over somebody that you probably trusted in significant ways, that has been a part of your life for a length of time, that you trusted with leadership of you spiritually. It's okay to feel a little bit brokenhearted over seeing them go. That's acceptable. But it's also notable to realize that this is a very modern thing, and it's a very uh, historically, it's a very uncommon thing historically. Uh, Mostly because if you lived in a town, let's say 1800, 200 years ago, you lived in whatever town you were, unless you like, I'm going to take off for the city to try and find work as industrialization takes over, you would have lived and died in the same town within, and even now it's a little bit similar of like, it's widened to 50, 80 miles, but you're going to spend your whole life within that same realm. You're going to do whatever your dad does as a breadwinning process. Like, you're going to grow up and you're going to take over that for him when he's no longer able to do it. So the mobility of our society is uncommon. Is when my wife and I decide, look, like, we got some vacation time coming up, we're going to take that. We think about plane tickets. We don't think about carriage ride hours, miles, anything like that. Like, we think like, well, it's only cheap tickets to whatever, a 7 hour flight down to wherever. We're gonna take it. That's a really good deal. We don't even fathom like, okay, whatever, that not a big deal. It's also notable that we're in a very different age, just from my age group to the Tide Pod generation is very different. How so? When I was a senior in high school, the iPhone had not even been released yet. Some of you don't even know that was like that existed as an age. The friend group that I grew up with in, growing up in church, there was like 8 of us ish, 8, 9 of us that grew up together. None of us had cell phones until the very end of high school. The very end of high school, and it was like on mom's dime, right? Mom would add a line onto theirs, and so none of us have those numbers anymore. So that like we don't really have the ability to contact each other that way. But they're all brick phones. As a junior in high school, I would have to borrow my dad's block Nokia, the one they make memes about, in order for like if we went on a church trip somewhere, so I could call him to come get me when we got back. Um, it was like that. So we didn't have this like like the idea of making a living on YouTube did not exist. Facebook had not come into what it is now. We all had MySpace, and we really didn't even get that deep into it. But we all had that. Like Instagram, Snapchat did not even exist yet as ideas. So the social media connectivity, like we're all friends on various social media platforms, but we're not nearly as super active. And we don't message each other that often either. Fast forward a little further, my first ministry job, working as a children's pastor, like an associate youth pastor, YouTube was kind of coming into its own, like that if you want to learn how to do something, you YouTube it, right? That was kind of the thing. We discovered that. We had a bunch of skater kids that we worked with, and that's like, if they wanted to learn anything, they would pull up Tony Hawk videos, how to do tricks and whatever. So as a result, no big deal. But I mean, MySpace was essentially dead, but Facebook had not released even like the marketplace, so it was still coming into its being. And so I'm friends with a lot of, like, 4 or 5 of the students that I had back then, but not many. When I vacated that position, came into when we moved here, Indiana, from California, we went through a thing of, dude, we're totally going to keep in touch, right? Everyone was saying, we're going to keep in touch, like the yearbook thing. Like, we're going to keep in touch. Love you guys. You're awesome, right? Well, out of all, like, I spent 5 years as a student ministry intern and mentor and whatever. Probably 60, 70 kids in that time period. Out of all of them, I interact with 2 of those students at all. And one guy that is closer to my age but still several years younger that I interact with on a regular basis. And that's it. The people that would come over to our house all of the time, the people that we would go over to their houses all the time, people that I worked with in as like colleagues in student ministry and things, I don't interact with any of those people anymore. And like, well, how much effort are you putting in? Honestly, not much. In some ways, when you move, you kind of intentionally, like, kind of put off messaging people just to see who's going to keep up with you. And quite honestly, it's disappointing. And I think that it's acceptable to see it that way, because of the fact that people would say, like, we are going to keep up, even though I knew that they weren't going to. And they knew that they weren't going to. But you say that. It's the same thing as when you write into the yearbook, don't change, hit me up if you're in town later, right? You say those things, but you don't mean them. And so my second piece of advice to you about this transition is that you need to manage your expectations. That's part of, like, half of life is just managing your expectations so that you know what you can reasonably expect out of society and out of yourself. And in this instance, quite honestly, don't tell somebody that you're going to keep up with them. Just don't do it. If you are going to, then you're going to. And that, like, after they moved and they've gotten settled, hey, call them on the phone. Probably not, because we're millennials. Hit them up on Snap, whatever, and just kind of, like, if you're going to do it, do it. But if you, for all the people that said they were going to, the people that were the most emphatic that they were going to are the ones that I don't hear from at all. So, quite honestly, like, just don't set yourself up for the disappointment of not doing it. Just don't overpromise, is what I'm saying. The next thing I would say is accept this. Like, this is kind of the new reality. There's some issues with it that I have that I'll get to eventually, I'm sure. But simply, we all know that death is coming. And so, no matter who you are, who your leader is, eventually you can expect that there will be a time when you will live without them because they'll die. If you have a leader, most likely they're older than you. So, like, eventually, and so these transitions that you go through, these brief, just kind of ministry transitions like that, I think serve us well to train us for that eventuality. Not so that we can form a callous and just stop feeling like, you know what, we're not going to commit to following any religious leaders anymore, any church pastors or anything, because we just don't want to get hurt again. No, not like that. That's bad. Not like that. But in fact, realizing that even if you say goodbye to your youth pastor now because they're becoming a senior pastor somewhere else, or to your student assistant or youth pastor or whatever because they're going off to college or whatever is happening, that's practice for the eventuality that no matter what they will die, but that you look forward and hope that you will see them again in heaven, and that when you do, you'll be able to catch up and enjoy each other for eternity after that fact. So, like I said, summarize. It's okay to feel. It's okay to feel that brokenheartedness. It's okay to feel the emotions of loss when you lose someone that's important to you that way. Don't overpromise, heap up big displays of grandeur to try and suggest that you're going to do a lot of things to keep up with them that you're just not going to do. And then third, look forward and hope to the day in heaven when you can be reunited with those people and enjoy each other and rejoice together for all eternity.